Hi, this is Kevin at the Virtual Planetarium at Raritan Valley Community College. Welcome to our weekly Star Talk. Today we're going to be talking about love. But before we do that, let's talk about our upcoming moon phases. We have a full moon on February 16th, we have a last quarter moon on February 23rd, and we have a new moon on March 2nd. So like I said, today we're going to be talking about love. Specifically, we're going to be talking about different constellations and objects befitting the day of love, Valentine's Day. We're going to start with some constellations and the love stories that surround them. So right now we're looking at our sky. We have the time set up for February 14th, Valentine's Day, for about 8 o'clock, and we're looking towards the western part of the sky where we're going to see the first constellations we are going to talk about. And we have the constellations of Perseus and Andromeda. Now these two lovers share a story within Greek mythology. And the story goes, we made a whole video on it, so I'm going to put the link for that in the description, but a short version of the story goes that Andromeda down here was a princess, and she was chained to some rocks by the people in her kingdom as a sacrifice because her mother claimed that she was more beautiful than the sea nymphs. And that really didn't make the god of the seas happy, so he sent a giant sea monster to destroy the kingdom. Well, instead of having the monster destroy the kingdom, the people of the kingdom tied her up as a sacrifice, and the monster was going to eat her instead. Which is why in the constellation here, we can see that she's tied up, some chains right there. So those are the chains that were tying her up to the rocks. Now, Perseus, right above her over here, just happened to be flying by, and he saw her tied up to the rocks, so he rescued her from certain death, slaying the sea monster using Medusa's head, which we can see that he's carrying right here. After that, they fell in love, and I think they got married, and yada yada yada. The love story part isn't the most compelling. It really just seems like a right place at the right time, but it's still a cute story, and it comes to us from Greek mythology. Now we're going to move to a familiar wintertime constellation that we've talked about quite a bit these last few weeks, and that is the constellation of Orion. Now, as a reminder, we can recognize Orion because of its belt right here. If I click on one of the stars, the whole thing comes up. He has two stars right up here that are the shoulders of the giant, and then the two knees down here, but the most recognizable part really is Orion's belt right here in the middle. Now, we've talked a lot about Orion, how to find it, how you can use it to find other stuff, but we haven't really talked about how the constellation ended up getting up in the sky in the first place. Well, one of the stories surrounding that is actually fitting for this time of the year, for Valentine's Day. And the story goes that Diana, the Roman goddess of moon and hunt, fell in love with Orion, who was also a hunter. Because of this, she stopped doing her duty, which was carrying the moon across the sky, and her brother Apollo, whose duty was to carry the sun across the sky, was then stuck doing both of their jobs. He was obviously not happy with this, and he was a little bit jealous of how much Orion loved Diana, I'm pretty sure. So he played a trick on his sister. He bet her that she couldn't hit the tiny speck in the horizon all the way in the middle of the ocean with her bow and arrow. And Diana, proud of her skills, shot her bow and arrow in this direction and killed the speck in the first try. But later she found out that the speck was really her lover Orion when she saw his body roll up to the shore. So she was really distraught by all this, really sad, and in mourning she decided to place him amongst the stars, and that's why we have the giant Orion the Hunter in the sky as a constellation. Now, above Orion, we can find another constellation of the Gemini twins. In another video, we talked about how to find this constellation. I'll put the link for that video in the description of this one so you can follow along a lot easier. Let's get rid of the moon here so we can see everything easier. But right above Orion, we have the two stars Castor and Pollux. And these two stars belong to the constellation of the Gemini twins. This constellation also goes with a love story, but in this case, it's a story of brotherly love. Because the story goes that the two brothers, Castor and Pollux right here, they were twin brothers, but they were fraternal twin brothers. And even more so, one of them was a god, Pollux right over here, and then Castor, his brother here, was a mere human. He was a mortal. So they were fraternal twins, and they were best friends, but one day Castor died in battle. This obviously made Pollux really, really sad, and he was so devastated that he pleaded to the gods to put them both up in the skies so they could be together forever. So the god Pollux gave up his immortality so he could spend the whole rest of eternity with his brother in the sky, which is really cute. Now, besides these love stories and constellations, we have other different objects in the sky that also represent the day of love in their own way. Now, the first object we're going to find, we're actually going to look at the morning sky. We have the sky set up for 5:30 in the morning. And if you look towards the southeast, we see a very, very bright dot, and that is the planet Venus. Now, as you might know, Venus is the Greek goddess of love, so it's a very big symbol of love that we have in the morning sky. So if you're up early, again, it rises at about 5 o'clock in the morning, and it stops being visible when the sun rises, so you have from 5 o'clock to like 6 o'clock in the morning. But if you do happen to be up at that hour, look towards the southeast, and you're going to see a very, very bright dot, and that is the planet Venus. It was up in the sky during the evening not that long ago, so hopefully some of you got the chance to see it when it was up at a reasonable hour. But if not, again, you can wake up at like 5:30 in the morning and see the goddess of love up in the sky. Now, the next few things we're going to look at are not quite as bright as constellations or planets. These are deep sky objects that also, again, represent the spirit of love and Valentine's Day. The first one we're going to look at is something called the Heart and Soul Nebula. So we have right here, as we zoom in, we can see them. These are actually right by the constellation of Cassiopeia. So if I select Cassiopeia down here, we can see it. So right above the shallow arm of Cassiopeia, we have two bright emission nebulas. This means that these are two clouds of gas and dust in outer space that are actually glowing on their own. And we see that the bottom one right here does kind of look like a heart. And this one right here is the Heart Nebula. And then next we have something called the Rosette Nebula, which is actually pretty close to the constellation of Orion right here. And you can really see why this one gets its name. We have a star cluster right here in the middle, but then we have another giant nebula up here with a reddish color that kind of looks like petals, and it really does look like a rose. Now, this cloud that we have here is something called an H2 region. So it's a cloud of hydrogen in outer space that when you see it, we can see it glow a very specific color of red. So it's even more fitting for the cliche Valentine's flower, the rose. And then lastly, we have our moon, which is probably the most romantic object in the sky. The great thing about the moon is that you don't need a telescope to see it, and you don't need one to be romanced by the moon. It's an absolutely beautiful sight, regardless of what phase it's in, so that's the treat. Now, the moon is going to be full on February 16th, which means that it's going to be mostly full on Valentine's Day, so it's going to be really bright and really easy to spot. So why not grab somebody you love, take them outside, and observe the beautiful wonders of the sky, including our beautiful, beautiful moon. Now, as a fair warning, it is going to be cold, probably, because it is still winter. So if you do go outside, please put on some proper jackets or blankets. You know, that's fun too. But thank you so much for joining us today. Hope you learned something new. At least you learned some different love stories in the sky. If you liked this video, be sure to give us a like. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channel. We're going to be putting out a new video every week. Thanks again for joining us. Hope you have a great Valentine's Day and hope you have a great week.